Hi, I'm Sam, the founder of the Broken Wife Effect. I've created this talk series to help women overcome potential challenges they may be having in their lives. This series will cover everything from spiritual to emotional, physical, and practical symptoms that may arise from the Broken Wife Effect. I hope you find this series useful. Welcome to the Broken Wife Effect Healing Talk Series. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So today is our second week or our second interview for this 8-part series. And today is a very special interview. Part of the reason is because October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And today we have a very special guest. Her name is Linda Wells. And she is the emergency services manager at a local shelter called Sheltering Wings. Sheltering Wings provides emergency housing service for survivors who are escaping domestic abuse. And Sheltering Wings helps to build stability and independence in the lives by different programs that they offer, as well as the housing. So today, Linda has joined us to share a little bit more about what she does there and why she has such a heart for it. So Linda, welcome to our interview series.
Hi, Sam, and thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
That's wonderful. I'm so glad that you joined us. Now, if you would like to start by just telling us a little bit more about what you do and why you do what you do.
Okay, sure. So I've been here at Sheltering Wings. October 28th will be my 19th year.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, the Lord led me here.
Yeah.
I have to be just honest and share that because, back in the early 1980s, I was in a domestic violence situation, very, very violent, abusive marriage. And back then we didn't have shelters and we didn't have really the resources. And I was so young, I didn't even know it had a name.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was happening to me was happening to other people. I felt like it was just happening to me.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And I ended up, once I left that relationship, and I can get into that here in just a moment, but I became a hairstylist, and I thought I would do hair for the rest of my life. I loved it. It was something I was passionate about, and I did that for 17 years. And one thing I noticed, though, through all those, you become a therapist when you're a hairstylist. You just did.
Yes. Yes.
When people sit down in your chair, they tell you everything, things you don't want to know. Yeah, it's true. But I had so many women share their story with me.
Yeah.
About their abuse, but I never said a word. I never said a word about my own because, you carry this guilt and shame of what you experienced. And so I did hair for 17 years, and then the Lord called me here.
Yeah.
And so, but through, unfortunately, my abusive situation, I ended up, I would leave and go back and leave and go back, as so many people do. But I went back one too many times, and I lost custody of my daughter.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter, because my ex-husband had beaten her. She was not his daughter, but he had beaten her when I was not there, and I ended up losing custody of her. And when I started at the shelter, I truly wanted to be the person I didn't have.
Yeah.
And I was going through it because, I didn't have anybody. I mean, I feel like my family didn't know how to help me, because they weren't educated on domestic abuse. And I wanted to be that person to help someone so they don't lose custody of their children.
Right.
And because back in the 80s, it was really hard. It was very difficult to lose custody of your child. It's not today.
Yeah.
It's not today. And so I don't know. I think for me, I just wanted to be that person. I said, Lord, I just want to help one person.
Yeah.
If I can make a difference in one person's life, all right, well, then that happened. And
Hmm.
it's like, okay, I want to do that again.
Yeah.
And so
Keep
here
it
I
coming.
am.
Keep it coming.
Yeah. So here I am 19 years later. And I started out as a third shift mentor.
Yeah.
I didn't care. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I wanted to share what the Lord brought me out of, and how he, just gave me the hope
Yeah.
that I needed so desperately to get me through my situation. And, um, I didn't care if I worked third shift or not. That was fine.
Yeah.
And then, throughout the years, I became a supervisor and a program director to oversee like all of the life skills programming for the adults and the children.
Hmm.
And now as the emergency services manager, it's all about that crisis intervention,
Yeah.
that piece when they first come in, um, and really just help them take a second to take a deep breath, and let's figure out what we're going to do next, but let them just, breathe a little bit. And then eventually they're going to meet with their case manager and things like that. But really, I mean, I oversee all of the emergency services staff, advocates, we call them CISs, crisis
Yes.
intervention shelter assistants. And yeah, that keeps me pretty busy.
Yes. Yes. And this interview hits me near and dear to my heart, because I have been able to volunteer at the shelter, as well as for about a year work there as a part-time staff member. So I have been able to witness and see some beautiful work that I have seen you do with different people that have been in and out of the shelter. And one of the things that I would love to touch on today too is when I first started going through training, just to even be a volunteer, when I started there, they were talking about the different forms of abuse. And it's not always just the physical.
Right.
And so do you want to talk a moment about some of the different ways that people are abused, where they are struggling?
Absolutely. So the obvious one is the
Mhm.
physical abuse. And and that can mean anything from, slapping, punching, pinching, pulling hair, putting a hole in a wall is also considered physical violence. Also, obviously, weapons. But
Mhm.
I think the one that obviously tags along with all the other forms of abuse is emotional abuse.
Yeah.
And that one to me is the most damaging, because
Yeah.
it kind of sticks with you
Mhm.
until you start really working through the healing process. And with emotional abuse, I mean, that's the name calling, and this is verbal abuse too, but it affects you emotionally. The name calling, the belittling. My ex-husband used to say to me all the time, that I was fat, that I was stupid, I was uneducated because I was a high school dropout. I was a marked woman because I became a mother before I was married.
Yeah.
All those things. He just confirmed how I felt.
Right.
And I'll never forget those words.
Yeah.
Well, almost 40 years later, they're still sticking with me. And so
Yeah.
there's that emotional abuse, and then there is spiritual abuse, which that happens more often than what we would like to think that it does.
Mhm.
Domestic abuse happens in the church.
Yeah.
Um, you don't pray right. God doesn't hear your prayers, or maybe you're forced to attend a church that you're not comfortable with,
Yeah.
or have a faith, you're forced into a faith that you don't believe in, or
Yeah.
maybe you're not even allowed to go to church.
Yeah.
So there's the spiritual abuse. Then there's financial abuse, which I didn't even know there was such a thing.
I know.
Seriously, I had no clue that because my name wasn't on anything, it wasn't on our lease, it wasn't on the vehicle. He would give me an allowance, even though I worked, I
Mhm.
would get an allowance. I didn't get my paycheck, but I got an allowance. So the financial abuse, we see that so much here,
Yeah.
or forced to take out credit. credit cards, rack the credit cards up, and then you're stuck with the credit card debt.
Yeah.
That's financial abuse. And then which nowadays we live in a, technology world. There's the digital abuse. So texting, and I'm talking about, it's super easy to abuse somebody when you're behind a keyboard or, your thumbs are moving on a phone, because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about like when you're obsessed with someone and you're blowing up their phone. Who are you talking to? Why are you not responding to my text right away? That sort of thing. Social media, all kinds of abuse happens on social media. The bullying also, it's super easy, believe it or not, to create fake accounts. A lot of abusers, they create these fake accounts with, the victims, survivors' names, plastered all over social media. It's humiliating, with maybe some, photos that they took as a married couple or something that shouldn't be posted on social media. And then, let's see, then of course there was the sexual abuse, which no one ever wants to really discuss. Sexual abuse, and it does happen in marriages. It truly does. And no one has a right to force themselves upon anyone,
right?
And no truly does mean no, and it's your body. And and I've had to say this so many times to married women, because they'll say to me, but I'm his wife, he can do to me whatever he wants. No, that's not true. It's still your body, and there should be, in a healthy relationship, there's a compromise there. That's, there's discussion, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and you come to an agreement. You don't just take what you want. But unfortunately, a lot of times after there's been a big blow up or physical violence, sexual abuse will happen. So so there's many different forms. It's not just the physical violence that so many people think that there is. And like I said, the emotional toll that it takes on people with all those forms of abuse is huge. And myself, and I probably, at this point, 19 years, I have met thousands of women. They will tell you, if I had to choose physical over emotional abuse, the physical abuse is not as bad as the emotional abuse. Because when, wounds will heal, but those emotional scars can last a long time if you don't deal with them.
Right.
If you don't seek healing.
That is the important part, is to be aware of what it is that you're still carrying around, that baggage that, maybe it's the words that were said, or, the whole package of everything dealing with abuse. And sometimes, the abuse starts when you are very young, whether it's parents or classmates, or, just different people you've had in your life. And it can affect, every time it affects a little bit more and more of you, to where you can become somebody that you don't want to be, or you are burdened so much by that abuse that you carry, and it weighs you down, and it keeps you from being able to fly and be free and be happy in your life.
Absolutely.
So I love that you said, that healing piece of it, that healing piece is so important. You, in your story, you have gone through so much, but you've also taken the time to really focus on, how can you get past it? What can you do to help yourself to be able to move on and to live a good life? So what is something that you feel that you have helped others with, with the some of what we're talking about are some of the symptoms of the broken wife, where you don't feel worthy, you don't feel that you are good enough, and all that could have come from all of those words and people telling you that all your life. What do you think is some things that you have been able to help other women with?
So I lead our Embracing Empowerment support group
Mhm.
on Thursday evenings. And one thing that I always, I always want to bring up is, let me help you find your why.
Yeah.
Why has this happened? Or why am I choosing the wrong partners?
Yeah.
Why am I carrying all this guilt and shame?
Mhm.
Why am I allowing myself to feel like it's always my fault?
Right.
So there's a lot of why questions. And honestly, it took me years to figure this out for me.
Yeah.
Seriously. And I think if I can help them save some time and heartache, I'm going to, because if you don't find out the why, it's going to keep happening,
Yes.
and I would, if I had to guesstimate, I would say probably 65 to 70% of the time, it's unresolved past trauma.
Yeah.
Like for me, I wasn't raised in a domestic violence home. Now,
Mhm.
there definitely was some dysfunction,
Yes.
but I wasn't raised in a violent home. But my dad died when I was 14, and he was our foundation of our family. And so for me, that was my trauma.
Right.
And, back in the 70s, you didn't go to therapy. It was unheard of to go to therapy. And so I didn't know how to process it. I didn't know how to grieve. And so then, I learned very early on how to push it all down.
Mhm.
And that is not healthy, because trust me, it comes out one way or the other. Maybe
Yes.
not then, but it could come out years later, and it did. And, then I started making some really bad choices. It kind of led me down a destructive path. And, when you lose your self-esteem, and that truly is, I, I would say, the biggest issue,
Mhm.
is you lose your self-esteem, you become vulnerable.
Yeah.
And so we really talk a lot about what that looks like and how we can build that self-esteem. Because and this kind of is I think most women, especially if you're a mother too, you don't put yourself first.
Mm-mm.
You're taking care of business, you're taking care of your family or whatever, and you put yourself on the back burner.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I didn't even know who I was. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know what I liked, because I was always somebody's puppet,
Mhm.
because I never figured out the why. It took me so long to figure out the why. And so I think that's huge.
Yes.
That's one of the biggest things that we really work on, and then really, and they laugh at me, but it's like, okay, I want you to look in the mirror every day and find one positive thing about yourself that you like.
Mhm.
So positive affirmations, because the voices in our head, you might hear your abusive partner over and over again tell you all these things. You're not worthy, you're not good enough, or it could just be the enemy.
Yeah.
It's a battlefield up here.
Yes. Yes, it
Um,
is.
but what if we changed that narrative
Mhm.
and we started talking to ourselves in a positive manner? You are worthy.
Yeah.
You are beautiful. You are smart. You are capable.
Yes.
And if we start changing that in our mindset, then hopefully, our lives are going to change for the positive. And so
Yeah.
that's really what I've have focused on a lot, is to meet people where they are,
Mhm.
and you know, and kind of show them that they are loved,
Yeah.
and that they are worthy, because they don't believe that they are.
Right. Well, and that is something with, the women that I have worked with, there are a lot of women that don't know how to be kind to themselves. We always get very critical of whether it's stuff we've done in our past, or how we see ourselves or whatever that is, and whether that is just something that's come from inside or something that people have said to you over the years. And we don't know how to be kind to ourselves. But I love what you said, just being able to look in the mirror. How many times would we do that, to look in the mirror and say, you are worthy, you are beautiful, you are loved. And for some people, that's very, very hard to do. But I tell the gals that I work with, just keep saying it. Try every single day. Just try to do it. And eventually it's going to feel more natural. You're going to be able to see yourself in a different light. And once that happens, the big shift really starts to move to where you can feel like you have your power back to make choices in your life and to get back to who you want to be.
Absolutely. And something that and I know I heard this somewhere, I don't remember where, but it stuck with me, and I've stolen it from whoever said it, and I've shared this over and over again, but we truly do teach people how to treat us.
Yes.
And when I first heard that, I'm like, oh, wow. And I'm not saying that anybody who goes through abuse is not your fault.
Right.
I'm not saying that's their fault. I'm saying, though, I always felt like I had this big neon sign over my head that said, I'm vulnerable, come and abuse me.
Yeah.
Because it goes back to that self-esteem. I didn't have any. But I was allowing people to treat me a certain way because I didn't know how to set boundaries.
Right.
And when I finally learned how to set boundaries, I didn't know how to keep them.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot of inner work that we have to do. And you can't give yourself a time frame. Oh, well, in a year I should be over all of this and I should be healed. It doesn't work like that. And so many people think that it does, but it doesn't.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, back in the day, therapy and stuff, counseling, all of that really wasn't something that you did, but there are so many options out there now. If you're not sure where to begin, if you're not sure how to get there, find help. There's a lot of help out there. And so it's reaching out, and even if it's just to friends or family that you truly can trust and that are there to support you, or finding different counseling services, or whether it's hiring a coach or whatever that looks like for you. I feel that I made my biggest progress when I started my healing journey, when I started reaching out. I did counseling services, and then I ended up hiring a coach, and it makes such a big difference when you have somebody to help guide you and who can see things in a different light and help you
where there's no judgment.
Yes.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing too, is, you already feel judged. You want somebody that you can trust, that's not going to judge you, that's going to share maybe a different perspective.
Yes.
And not point the finger. I had one person in my life. This goes all the way back to when I was in cosmetology school, and probably my first 7 years as a cosmetologist, but she followed me into the salon, and she was a Christian woman, and I didn't know anything about God or anything back then. I mean, I knew there was a God, but that's all I really knew.
Right.
And she knew I was out doing things I shouldn't have been doing. I lived in a small town. I did a lot of bad things. I'm just going to say I did a lot of bad things. I did, because I didn't care about me.
Right.
I didn't care about me. And so she never once pointed her finger at me and, told me I was going to go to hell, or, like that I was a bad person or anything. She just loved me through my faults and failures.
Yeah.
And she would say, can I pray with you? And this was in the salon, and I'd be like, okay.
Yeah.
But I was uncomfortable at first. And so she would pray, but she was just so kind.
Yeah.
so kind to me, and she never gave up on me. That's the thing. She never gave
Yeah.
up on me. And so I truly believe one, wouldn't be alive
Mm-hmm.
or here today if it wouldn't have been for, I'm going to say her name out loud. Her name is Cherie Wilson. And I'm forever grateful for her because, like I said, I could trust her. I didn't understand the depth of, like, God's love
Right.
and his redeeming love.
Yeah.
His redeeming love, because here's the hardest part: forgiving yourself.
Yes. Oh,
That
yes.
that was the hardest part for me. But when I finally arrived, that's when true freedom
Yeah.
takes place, and I honestly, I felt like once I could let it go and where I could forgive myself. And even though, I lost custody of my daughter all those years ago because of domestic violence, God has restored that relationship.
Yeah.
And he's brought it full circle, and so I wouldn't be here today without her,
Yeah.
without her prayers and without her encouragement, even when I didn't want it.
Yeah. No, and that's wonderful. It's amazing. God puts the right people in our lives.
Mhm.
So, if we are just open to see, it's amazing what he does.
Mhm.
So that is beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for all the work you have done over the years, helping others and just following that passion, just to be able to support others and help them to get to a better place. So
You know what?
go ahead.
I was going to say thank you for that, but they've taught me.
Yeah.
They've taught me. So it's been a double blessing, truly.
Yes.
They've
Yes. Yep. I just from working at the shelter, the short time I have, it's amazing what you can learn just by being there for somebody.
Mhm.
So it's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I do want to end on, what is your superpower?
Well, again, I think my superpower is my faith in God.
Yeah.
I couldn't do what I do every day because it's hard work.
Yes.
Life's hard enough, but it's hard work without my faith.
Yes.
And I feel like God has given me the ability to offer grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I love people. I have a heart. I think that's my superpower. I love those who might not love themselves, and I can give them grace, and I can also hold them accountable when I need to hold them accountable.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
I think you need both in your life. You need
Yes.
that grace and truth. So I think that would be my superpower.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Linda, thank you so much today for joining us. And I'm going to put some information in the description on if you do need help, if you do need a place that you need to search for some guidance and stuff. We'll have some links and stuff in the description. And yeah, so if there's anything, you're also welcome, I guess, to private message me if there's something that you are struggling with and maybe you need a little more guidance. If it's not something that I personally can help you with, I know I can, either reach out to Linda or see if there's another place that we might be able to help get some guidance. So if by chance you are living in a relationship where there is abuse, just know you're not alone and there are people that are there to help you. So, okay, with that, just want to send all of you a lot of peace, love, and joy. And thank you for joining us today. And until next time, you take care.